Hey, what's up YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here, back again for another video. This time we are talking about video games based on television shows, so without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay, so if you were a child of the 90s like I was, chances are that you had a dad or an uncle or someone who watched Xena Warrior Princess on USA, and the reason why is because Lucy Lawless was a total babe in the 90s and she starred in the show. This first game we are talking about, Xena Warrior Princess, on the original PlayStation, released in 1999 by Electronic Arts, and this is a hack and slash game set in the Xena Warrior Princess universe. In the show, it kind of takes place it's a lot of it is based on Greek mythology, and so the story goes that she's hanging out with her friend Gwen in this video game, and she goes off to visit another friend in a village that she sees on fire. Once she goes there, she sees that the place has been ransacked by pirates. She takes on the pirate leader, and the pirate leader tells her that the attack on this village was just a distraction so that they can catch her friend Guinevere on the road, and it has to do with like an angry goddess, and they were using Gwen as a sacrifice, and yada yada yada. Long story short, as Xena, it is your job to hunt down Guinevere and rescue her and defeat the evil goddess. And so in this game, like I mentioned, it's a third-person hack and slash game. Playing it now, 20 years later, the controls are pretty clunky. At the time, they were a lot smoother. The controls are a little clunky. You do have your block, you have your dodge, your punches and kicks, and of course you slash with your sword. Another thing that you have is your chakram, I believe is the device. It's a little disc type weapon that Xena used in the show. She threw it like a boomerang. She could use it to cut rope on obstacles. She could use it to take out enemies or cause distractions and a lot of stuff. And it's implemented actually very well in the game. It's a very modern kind of feel the way you throw it, and you can kind of control the trajectory, kind of similar to the wing stick in the Rage series if you played that, and other games that kind of use that whole boomerang mechanic, and you can kind of control it once it's in the air. It works pretty good, and it works pretty precise. I can hit enemies who are holding hostages, and I can toss it and hit enemies in the head or the leg or whatever the case to knock them out and get the hostages away. There is some puzzle solving in this game and platforming, which unfortunately brings up my biggest issue with this game. The camera is pretty bad. The camera, like most 3D action games and 3D platformers of that era, the camera has a mind of its own, and so it's hard for it to lock right behind you when you're platforming on obstacles, which caused me to miss more often than not, which is a source of frustration in all 3D games I play. But overall, this was a pretty good game. The graphics at the time felt even dated to me, so they obviously don't hold up well today. Most games in that era, as far as the graphics, don't, unfortunately, so it's not, by today's standards, a very good looking game, as it wasn't that great a looking game in 1999. But for me, that's not a deal breaker for me most of the time, as long as the gameplay is there, and for the most part the gameplay is there. You can feel it's a little bit dated, but for the time it was, you know, it was cutting edge at the time as far as the gameplay and the things you can do. It felt modern and it felt exactly like it was supposed to. So that's my first game, Xena Warrior Princess. Not bad if you can find it. I think it goes for about $15-ish last time I checked. So if you are a fan of the show or a fan of the PlayStation and you won't mind the clunky camera and the graphics, then I can definitely recommend this to you. If that is an issue for you, then probably go ahead to pass this one up. Alright, jumping forward next to the PlayStation 3, and this is a game that came out around 2009 or so. This is released, published by Deep Silver, and this is Prison Break, The Conspiracy, and this of course is based on the Prison Break TV show that aired on Fox in the early to mid 2000s. In this, the show takes place in Fox River Prison, at least the first season does, and the main protagonist is Michael Schofield, who's sent himself to prison in order to rescue his brother Lincoln Burrows, who's on death row and is set to be assassinated for a crime he didn't commit. And he was set up by a shady organization called The Company, In the game, though, it's a bit of a twist. You don't play as Michael Scofield like you assume you would, but in fact, you play as a guy named Tom Paxton, who is an agent of the company that set Lincoln Burrows up, and your objective is to monitor and report Michael Scofield to figure out what his idea is, why he's planning on going to prison, and to make sure that Lincoln Burrows gets assassinated on time like he's supposed to. So this is an action-adventure game with heavy stealth elements as you sneak around Fox River Prison. Fans of the show will like this game a lot, as you get to meet a lot of the characters who showed up in the show, and most of them reprise their roles. So C-Note is in the game, Schofield and Burroughs in the game, of course. Bellick's in the game, the crazy CO. You've got T-Bag, who's in the show. He makes an appearance in this game, and overall, it's a pretty decent game. You do fight with other prisoners and such. The combat, the hand-to-hand combat in it felt very clumsy to me. It wasn't well done at all, in my opinion. I thought it was very slow and sluggish, and I missed shots. It was kind of hard to counter and things like that. So the combat, in my opinion, is pretty boring. The stealth works out pretty good. Nothing major spectacular there, but the stealth is pretty straightforward and standard. The graphics also pretty straightforward and standard. It's kind of a dark game, and the graphics, for the most part, the character models look okay, the environments look okay, but I mean, in 2009 there were certainly better looking games, and this kind of has the feel of a budget title kind of all the way around. The story, though, like, it takes place in key moments in the first season, and you'll kind of see it from Paxton's perspective, so he's kind of there alongside the action, kind of in the background, and so it's kind of cool to see these events unfold kind of from the outside looking in, and from a unique perspective. So all in all, again, this one is hard to recommend unless you're a fan of the show. Even stealth action adventure fans will have a hard time playing this game when there are so many better options around. So that is Prison Break: The Conspiracy. Alrighty, hop into the PlayStation 2 now, and this was a game that came out in 2006. It's by THQ, and it's based on the very popular SpongeBob SquarePants. This is SpongeBob SquarePants and a creature from the Krusty Krab, and as most of you know, I got this in the lot of games I just picked up last weekend, so I thought this was a good opportunity to check it out. This game takes place in the dreams of a lot of the characters from the show, and there's plenty of fan service there as far as the humor being there. The atmosphere is kind of hit or miss, though, and the thing about it, it takes place in the dreams of a lot of these characters, so because of that, there's a bunch of different and crazy scenarios, and they've kind of had the freedom to be creative with that. The issue with it is, because it takes place in a lot of people's dreams, you don't really get the feel that this game takes place in Bikini Bottom, which is where the show takes place at. So the atmosphere is there as far as the characters and the jokes and all of that stuff is squeezed in there, but the environment is not there at all, which kind of makes me feel like this was almost like a different game with SpongeBob slapped on it in the later stages of development. But like I said, a ton of different gameplay styles, although this game is a 3D platformer at heart. There'll be flying sections in it, and racing sections, and kind of on-rails sections in the game. And like I said, I haven't played too much of this, played the first couple of levels. So far I was enjoying it enough. I thought the graphics could have been a lot better, though. There were certainly a lot of games, even especially on the PlayStation 2, looked better than this in 2006, and so I felt, again, the budget feel on this game. But overall, I thought it was decent if you're in the 3D platformers, and definitely if you're a fan of SpongeBob, I definitely can recommend this because I thought that it played very well. The camera, of course, you can control. One weird thing about the game is all the controls are inverted. So if that's not your thing, you can go in the options mode, and I recommend doing that upon starting the game. Go into the options and switch all the inversion back, and the controls won't feel backwards. But other than that, I thought this was a good game, and since it's going for about $10, I definitely think it's worth that. I couldn't recommend it, though, if it was much more than that, but decent. Okay, going on to the original Xbox now, and this next game, this is another game by Electronic Arts, and based on the popular TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer that ran on Fox again in kind of the mid to late 2000s. And of course I'm talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This was a TV show that was based on a movie that came out in 1992, but Joss Whedon, who's famous for writing the Avengers and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Firefly and Serenity and a bunch of other stuff. He also wrote this, and of course he's responsible for Angel 2. The game, it centers around Buffy, who's a teenage vampire slayer. I kind of watched the show off and on, so I wasn't really into it. There were some other shows that I was watching around the time period, but it was entertaining from what I saw, and definitely a lot better than the movie, which was kind of cheesy and campy, but this kind of put a more serious spin on it. The video game is fantastic though. It's kind of your standard 3D action adventure, hack and slash, beat 'em up, all of that. The fight mechanics are superb in this, in my opinion. The camera works very well as you control it. She's got a kick, a punch, and she's got like a finishing move. If she gets something like a wooden stake or a crossbow or one of the other weapons, she can use that to finish off enemies. This was a dark game too, and you'll see in some of the gameplay footage here, and some of it looks different than some of the other footage because I boost the gamma up later on and brightened it up. And once I brightened it up, then the graphics look quite a bit better in my opinion because you can actually see everything. But not much to say about this game. This is highly recommended, and this is a game that you can often find for under $10. And the first Buffy the Vampire Slayer was an Xbox exclusive. There was a sequel that I think was a PlayStation 2 exclusive, so if you can find either one, personally I think the original on the Xbox is a little better, but you should grab them both, and at the prices that they're going for, there's no reason not to, especially if you're a fan of the show or anything Joss Whedon. The story in the game is written very well as well, so definitely if you see this, highly recommended, scoop it up. Alright, and then last but certainly not least, this is a game on the PlayStation 3. You can also find it on the Xbox 360 and the Nintendo Wii U. And this is a game that goes all the way back to my childhood, that originally aired in the late 80s, early 90s on Disney. And I am talking about Disney's DuckTales Remastered. You can also find this game on the original Game Boy and the NES. The remastered edition though, of course, the nice crispy graphics and the sound and everything. Speaking of the sound, all the original cast reprised their roles in this, so that's fantastic. And of course you play as Scrooge McDuck. His vault has been raided by the Bugle Boys, and so he's there to stop them, to kidnap his nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and he ends up rescuing them in the first mission, but later on it becomes a mission, I believe, to retrieve all of his lost gold. So in this game, of course, you play as Scrooge McDuck. All of the techniques and maneuvers are there, from the pogo jump and the golf swing and things like that. I thought this game was fantastic. The fresh coat of paint on it, it looks great. Don't quote me on this, but I believe this was developed by Way Forward. And Way Forward is known for a ton of great platforming games, most notably the Shantae series. So this definitely felt like you were playing that, and like I said, they are top notch as far as the feel and the controls and everything like that, just spot on. This game started to jump up in price once the digital version was taken off of the server, so now you can only get it on the aforementioned 3 consoles. This is the PlayStation version here, but still, I wouldn't pay for any version. I wouldn't pay more than $30 for it. I've seen people on eBay try to sell this game for $100, $200. Don't fall for that. You can still get this in GameStops. If you look hard enough, you can find all 3 versions for under $30, and it's definitely worth that. I would have paid new price for it, and luckily I got mine at like $10 before the price hiked up, but still definitely worth it at $30. And if you're a fan of the show, or if you're just a fan of Disney in general, you gotta play this game. And it doesn't matter what system it's on, all of them play just about the same. So highly recommended DuckTales. If you see it, definitely scoop it up. Alright guys, so I think that's going to do it for this episode, but just lay it down below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What are some of your favorite games based on television shows? Like I said, going back to the 8-bit, 16-bit era, there was a lot of games based on Disney shows like Darkwing Duck and Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, a lot of stuff like that. Of course, there's plenty of other games based on Cartoon Network franchises and Nickelodeon franchises, and many more. So like I said, lay down your suggestions down below and we will take a look at those perhaps in a future episode. If you do like this content, please go ahead and give me a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.